All right, welcome back. We're going to be talking about African culture now and Afro beats. I'm sure you know, if you watch this show long enough, that I'm not a huge fan of that name, Afro beats. But we are going to be going with that and talking about, how much of a global domination that African music and Nigerian music in particular has become in the last couple of months and years. Beyonce has tapped into it, Diddy's tapping into it. We're having all of these features. Drake, a lot of huge artists from Hollywood and the diaspora seem to want to have a piece of the pie that is Nigerian music. So we're going to be talking about that and, how exciting or conscious or cautious we should be about this new sort of spotlight on us. And I have here with me Ade Bantu. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, man.
No better person to be talking about this because you understand this, how this works. You've worked internationally, you've worked locally, you know what this could become. And a lot of the conversations I hear a lot of people talk about is this has happened with Jamaica before, when reggae and raga and then dancehall became a thing, and every American artist wanted to, feature one person from there or be a part of that scene. And then it now looks like it was a phase because everybody has moved on. Should we be worried? Is this a phase for Nigerian music, you think?
It is a phase, but the beautiful thing is that it's not niche. So what has happened is, like, for the first time ever in the history of African pop music, we're actually not world music. That was the term the Europeans and Americans used to use for African music. They just generalized us as world music. Now we're contemporary players in the pop markets. So you have the Wizkids, the Burna Boys, the Davidos, all crossing over. So we've established a presence, but we don't actually have sole ownership of the culture. Why do I say so? Because ultimately, the term Afrobeats illustrates it. Somebody came up with a name that sounds very dodgy. I mean, you're not comfortable with it. I'm not comfortable with it. And with that, the sole ownership is not really verified by Africans. So we can't actually call the shots. And then the problem being that a lot of artists are signed to international labels. They have their politicking and all of that. So we need to be very cautious. It's exciting. This is something unique. It's never happened before. But we need to understand the psychology and the mechanics of pop music and of white supremacy as well, which comes to play because Africa is still perceived by the West as a dark continent,
Do you see any exploitation going on so far? There are people who think this is, there's already some exploitation going on already. These guys are coming in here, they're featuring artists. Some people might not even be signing the right sort of contracts yet because they just want to get that exposure with a Beyonce or with a whoever it is. Do you sense some exploitation already happening with the sound and the artists?
I think exploitation is inevitable when you don't have structures in place. So a lot of these young artists don't have proper representation in terms of management, lawyers, people that act as gatekeepers, intermediaries, So what you have is actually artists signing dodgy deals and then going online, I don't want to name any names, and then really venting their anger, their frustration with their international partners, So that shows that there's some form of short-sightedness that comes from the artist's perspective, which is understandable. A label in New York knocks at your door and says, hey, we want to sign you for a lucrative deal. The numbers look good. But you also have to understand that there's a certain timeline and there's a certain way they operate. I think Burna Boy has kind of like decoded that system because you see, he released an album last year. He's releasing a new one. He seems to have the right people around him, and he sees himself as a global player. So I think he's the one to watch out for because he's the one that is actually going to establish the global presence. And I think he also did it on the Beyonce album, which is something that I hope a lot of artists took note of. He specifically did not act as a go-between. He came with a solo song, featured as a solo artist, and not like an add-on to a Beyonce idea or song or track. So there are a lot of elements in play. And back to your question, we need gatekeepers or else these young talents are going to be exploited.
I think we're joined by online by Oris Aigbokhaevbolo, who's very well versed in this conversation. Oris, I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Oris.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So I just wanted to get your sort of insights on this because there's a lot happening, and I know a lot of us are excited, but I know people like you who are very good critics and know how to watch this space. Maybe are also very cautious about things happening. How excited are you? How nervous are you? How cautious are you about the way this sort of new global spotlight on Nigerian music?
I'll say frankly I am somewhere in the middle. I am I'm very happy to have these artists who have been working very hard over the past few years be recognized on such a platform as Beyonce's. But I'm also wary about the or about ownership.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I have an issue with who gets to decide what this is, who gets to name it, who gets the most benefit out of it. These are some of my concerns.
Yeah.
I recall when the song with Wizkid, Brown Skin Girl, was released. Everybody was kind of happy, but I kept thinking about the credits. I do not know that Wizkid has any credit besides that of a vocalist on that album, and I think it's a bit worrisome. But on the same, but I'm also happy that he's there. So yeah, so for me, it's I'm happy for these guys to get the bag, as we say.
Yeah.
But but I'm more interested in ownership and I'm more interested in naming. So
Yeah.
I mean, like you probably expressed earlier, about a discomfort with the name Afrobeats, which I hate, by the way.
So we're all
But
together in
I
this.
recognize, yeah, exactly, yeah. But I recognize that it appears that the battle has been won and lost.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I wonder about that. Something Ade Bantu said earlier is quite instructive about reggae music. Um, Essentially, when reggae was pretty much coming into the West, they had to pretty much mix the sound. I know people don't really recognize this, but it's kind of why Bob Marley became the biggest reggae act. His sound was the most malleable to being mixed with, let's say, rock music at the time. So I wonder about what that would mean for us at some point. Bantu rightly said that we used to be called world music with everybody else, Caribbean music, African music, everywhere else, South American music as well. Everything used to be called world music. But now it appears we are Afro beats, but I think we need more differentiation.
Yeah.
Because of course, Adekunle Gold is not singing the same songs as Wizkid, who is not singing the same songs as Burna Boy. So there's all of these
Yeah.
divisions within the
I,
space.
I,
I
I
feel
want
like we
us.
need to.
I want to end on sort of a happy note, and I want to start with theories before I come to a day very quickly now. I mean, there's already a
All right.
second guard that seems to be taking over. We are hearing of the Remas and all of these other people who are already coming through, to sort of hold forth for Afro beats, as it were. Are you excited about the future, though?
Uh, yes, I am. I'm worried anyway on one level about the songwriting. I don't think that has developed from generation to generation, but the sound, yes, and maybe the performance, maybe. But I'm worried a lot about the songwriting. I don't think that any of the new guys has proven themselves to be particularly great songwriters or actually
Yeah.
have a great songwriting team. That's my own concern.
Is that the same concern for you? Are you excited, or are you wondering if this is
I'm worried about the future because I still think we don't have the right mechanisms in place. Like Oris
still?
rightfully pointed out, songwriting. In the United States, you have teams of writers that guide an artist. Michael Jackson didn't write his songs alone. And why does a young talent have to force himself to be a great lyricist or force himself to find melodies when he's not capable? So that is what is missing. So everybody's into the Afro beats, and the term already says it. It's all about the beats. And we can deliver in terms of lyrics. And that is the problem you also notice on the Beyonce album. You're just like, why can't we really show more versatility and more depth? And this whole idea of Africa being one country is very problematic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work to be done. We need to educate the young ones. We need to hold them by the hands, because we, the older ones, we can't just be condescending, or else we're failing them. So we have to guide them.
Let me put you guys on the spot now. I'll start with you, Ade. We've talked a lot about this Beyonce album, and it's been a very huge talking point for a lot of people who've watched. Most people loved it. Aesthetically beautiful. We can't take that away. It's also nice to see that she tries to keep certain things authentic, you know, with certain sounds and with the visuals and all of that. But there's also the other argument about what is she really doing? Oh, now Africa is fashionable. Now you suddenly want to be a part of the conversation, which is where the exploitation talk has come out a lot from. You know, you've done a world tour as Beyonce every year since you've been Beyonce. You've never toured Africa. You know, how do you feel about this new Black is King, you know, Mama Africa? Some people even try to call her that online already. How do you feel about this Beyonce sort of project and what it means for the conversation?
I mean, I respect Beyonce's hustle, especially as a woman in the pop industry. It's very, very difficult and challenging. And she's evolved as an artist and as a businesswoman. And Africa is the in thing now, and it is beautiful. But because we don't have the right structures in place on a Pan-African level, that's why somebody can come and use Africa as a prop. You know, because, I mean, we Nigerians are proud of the fact that we're represented on the album, but we're not talking for the rest of the continent, because East Africa was underrepresented, South Africa, the Central African republics, you know. So that is problematic in itself. So how do you decolonize the mind of the West, including our cousins, our distant cousins in the United States, you know, because Africa is not a country.
Yeah. Oris, what's your take on Black is King? I mean, I think this started off from the Wakanda conversation with Black Panther, where, you know, there was this utopia of what Africa looks like. And then Black is King has also sort of continued that conversation. And a lot of people are like, is this really our story? Do you think she did a good job with Black is King?
Ebuka, I think this is a very charged.
Don't worry, the hive is not coming for you.
I think that the one area in which I don't think anybody can give Beyonce anything less than an A is in the aesthetics, the cinematography of Black King. It's so pretty to look at. It's an incredibly pleasing vision to just have on your screen. However, I don't know. Culturally, of course, I'm not sure anybody can say she even gets a pass mark, frankly, because, I mean, it's a complicated continent that she's pretty much trying to put on I don't know, an hour or something, an hour and 30 minutes or something. So it's not something that I don't think anybody can fully achieve. So what she's done instead is to rely on, what's it called, tropes already established, which is a bit of a tricky thing, because if you are Nigerian, I'm not sure you can really pointedly see yourself a lot in this. You have to be thinking of yourself as this vague thing called African to be able to like appreciate what it is she's done culturally. I don't know that if you are from, say, the Gambia, there's anything about you in this, and yet this is supposed to be your story. So so culturally, I don't think so much about it, but I think it's such a great thing to look at. And even in terms of the music as well, everybody seems to forget that when the album came out last year, after a few weeks, it was pretty much out of the discussion.
Yes.
The same thing has happened again. I think, in fact, speaking with you now, it's not I'm even remembering, she actually did this. So this is even in terms of the artistry and in terms of the cultural relevance, I do not think heavily about this, frankly. I think that it's a good thing, and I hope that the people who are involved get their monies. But as a continent, I think we have more pressing issues, frankly. Yeah. Even musically, as well, we have more pressing issues.
We've talked a lot about structure here, and I feel like we've had this structure conversation for decades, from Nollywood to the music industry. We keep talking about structure, and the structure, I don't know who's about to start laying the foundation for it. But Exactly. Speaking about the future now, are you excited for Afro beats as it is? Because there's the one argument that, okay, we don't like the name, but so they put everybody in a pot, but it also helps us sell it better when we're selling it as one thing, as against this complex pot of so many sounds that is supposed to be represented in from one country or from one continent. What do you think the future of Afro beats is with regards to how we are selling it or how it's sold to the world?
Is this me or Ade Bantu?
Yes, to you, yes.
Oh, yes. Frankly, I think I'm a huge fan of the sound, by the way. Because I think one of the brilliant things about Afro beats, I mean, not this name now, but the sound, is how much it is everything and not one thing.
Yes.
For instance, I think when they interviewed, I don't know, I think it was one of the radio guys who interviewed Davido years ago. Something he said that he thinks that he fuses a lot of things in his music. And when they spoke to, when someone else interviewed Burna Boy, he said it was Afrofusion.
Yes.
I think that there's an important. I think that that's an important way of looking at it. Afro beats, which I really think is African pop, frankly, and then you have different divisions, Nigerian pop and the rest. But yeah, I think it's a lot of things. It's exactly what pop music is in the West. You take something from here, you take something from there, and then you make it into this pleasing thing to the ears. So as far as the sound goes, I think that the most brilliant part of the industry or the sound is the producers actually. And so because those guys will, I think, increasingly become great. I don't think anybody's as good as SARS, for instance. SARS is fantastic. So people like that, I think they will keep on doing great work. We just need to figure out the rest. But the sound will be fine. We just need to figure out the rest. So as far as marketing goes, it's brilliant, I think, honestly, marketing. It sells it, and because it's established over the past few years, it probably works. Frank, but as a human being, as a critic, as a Nigerian, it's a terrible, terrible name, but the sound works. And I think as far as the sound works, we will always, have a place in the international community.
Yeah. Ade Bantu, I mean, isn't it easier to sell it as one product? I know we're talking a lot about, it's not one sound, and you're a huge fan of alternative music.
Yeah.
But if you're going to sell something, especially in a world where there's already so much being sold, why not sell it as one thing?
I agree there's strength in numbers, and I mean, in terms of terminologies, it is important to first of all use a Trojan horse, which Afrobeats could be or is already. But I think we're emancipating ourselves. Let's also look into that. Burna Boy calling his music Afrofusion, Adekunle Gold using the term Afro-pop. So I think you're going to have that, which is interesting because I guess these guys travel around the world and it's dawning on them like this stray jacket here doesn't work for us, So back to your question, it is important to make sure that we don't spend too much energy trying to convince the West that we're as good as they are.
Yeah.
Because what we have here is the world is already paying attention to us. So let's show them the whole palette of what Africa has to offer. So somebody might call their sound Alte, somebody might call it Fufu sound, the other person may call it Banku music or whatever. Let us present it like that. Let us not be afraid because I think...
So that's what got them the attention in the first place.
Exactly. And when trying to use one term and a generic term for a continent goes back to the idea of Africa being one, being a country. It just doesn't work. It doesn't tally. And on another point, what is very important is to understand that you don't make the money from the music. I am on Spotify or people buying your CDs. You make the money from touring. And we need to prepare this generation for touring. They need to be good performers on the live stage. And that is where a lot of Nigerian artists are failing their international audiences. So they get put on a Coachella stage, for example, massive stage, and they're not well prepared. The band doesn't sound good. The artist is not investing the time, energy, and resources in rehearsal. So people don't get the value for their money. And for the next kid coming, it's going to be double as difficult because they're like, well, that slot would rather give it to an American or Jamaican artist because you Nigerians don't deliver. And that's what I keep hearing from festival organizers in Europe. And that's where we're trying to come in with, say, Afropolitan vibes. Where we're like, you need to play with a band, you need to rehearse, do the vocal training and all of that. So I'm very particular about that.
Well, thank you very much, Ade. Thank you very much, Oris. Please come back when we'll call you again. We're going to take a break now and be right back. Please don't go away.